Have you ever imagined what it would be like to date your best friend? Not your actual best friend, but some hypothetical person that fills that role. Someone who shares all of your interests. Someone you can do everything with. Someone who loves all the things that you love and never gets bored of doing them. It sounds pretty awesome, right? Marrying your best friend is such an idyllic and appealing concept that it's become a cliche in wedding vows the world over. But is it really all it's cracked up to be? Do you really want to spend every moment of time with your partner doing things you both enjoy and always being on the same wavelength? Yeah, obviously. It sounds amazing. Why wouldn't you want that? But what if you were dumb? Would dating your best friend still sound appealing if you had no idea how relationships work? If you didn't know what it would mean to change from them being your best friend to being your partner? What if you were, say, a high school student? Well, chances are you'd screw it up. Tomo-chan is a Girl is the story of Tomo Aizawa, a girl in her first year of high school. Tomo is all about sports and competition. She excels in every form of physical activity. Her dad runs a karate dojo, meaning she grew up as a fighting prodigy. She's a happy-go-lucky airhead who turns everything into a competition. Truly the epitome of a tomboy. But despite her personality, Tomo-chan is a girl. Inside of her muscular chest beats the heart of a pure maiden, and that maiden heart has been given away long ago to just one man. And that man is her best friend Junichiro Kubota. Junichiro, or Jun as others call him, is Tomo's childhood friend, having moved in next door when they were kids. He ended up joining her family's karate dojo where he still trains as her father's best pupil. He's ready to take on any challenge Tomo throws at him, and he's more than happy to issue his own when there's an opportunity to turn something into a test of strength. He's athletic, peppy, and dumb. Basically just a male version of Tomo. Tomo is in love with Jun, and true to her nature, she decides to give it her all and confess her love to him, in literally the opening scene of the entire series. Oof. Here we're presented with the major conflict of Tomo-chan. It's even in the title. See, the issue that comes from all the competition and sparring and general broing around is that Jun sees Tomo as a best friend, a bro, one of the guys. What he does not see her as, however, is a woman. Jun doesn't just reject Tomo's confession, he doesn't even recognize it as one. Tomo-chan as a series was conceived by author Yanagita Fumita as a one-off joke premise. This is something that really shows through the earliest pages of the manga, with them being joke after joke about Jun treating Tomo like a boy, asking her what kind of girl she likes, patting her on the butt, trying to follow her into the restroom, all things that would be okay to do with your best bro, but get kinda awkward when your bro wears a bra. These jokes are pretty one note, and mercifully a lot of them are cut from the beginning of the anime adaptation. Tomo's one confidant in her romantic woes is her other best friend, Misuzu Gundo. Misuzu has been friends with Tomo and Jun since the three of them were children, despite not really fitting into the other two's dynamic. She's not athletic, not competitive, at least not when it comes to sports, and she's very conscious of high school social dynamics. Misuzu tells Tomo she's the architect of her own misery. She cites Tomo always playing with the boys growing up and never wanting to play dolls or house with her as why everyone treats her like a guy. While Tomo is completely oblivious, Misuzu sees very clearly how the rest of the school perceives Tomo and Jun's relationship, and she understands the dynamics of the relationship itself. This is why Misuzu is typically a voice of reason for Tomo, and provides a dose of perspective that Tomo regularly lacks. Tomo asks Misuzu for advice on how to get Jun to see her as a girl, and Misuzu tries her best. She encourages Tomo to talk more feminine, dress less boyish, weaponize her body to make her femininity impossible to ignore. Yet despite her efforts, all of them seem to backfire in one way or another. It seems to Tomo like nothing she's doing is working, but to the more perceptive Misuzu, it's clear that Jun is more aware of Tomo's femininity than he's willing to let on. While she may seem cool-headed, Misuzu is not without her own quirks. Misuzu is kind of scary. She doesn't seem to have her own group of friends outside of Tomo, and because of that, she's very possessive. She'll ruthlessly cut down anyone that harms Tomo, and ruin the social life of anyone that threatens her position as Tomo's best friend. Naturally, this puts her at odds with Tomo's other bestie, Jun. Add on to that the fact that Tomo has a crush on him and regularly asks Misuzu for love advice, and you get an increasingly complicated web of conflicting motivations. The dynamic between Misuzu and Jun is a much simpler one that can pretty much be described as pure antipathy. In the first episode of the anime, we see the two waiting at the school exit, both having forgotten their umbrellas. Both are waiting for Tomo with the expectation that one of them will get to walk home protected from the rain. They trade barbs. Jun recounts how Misuzu always got them in trouble as kids, but never had to face the consequences, and Misuzu torments him by openly wondering what might happen if Tomo got a boyfriend. Before things can escalate further, Tomo shows up. Given the choice of who to walk home with, she gets embarrassed and picks Misuzu. Misuzu, on the other hand, forces Tomo to pick Jun, and those two walk home together. This scene is a nice little microcosm of Jun and Misuzu's relationship. They're constantly at odds with each other, fighting for Tomo's attention. And yet, Misuzu keeps trying to get Tomo and Jun together. She wants Tomo to herself, while at the same time pushing her into Jun's arms. What she wants and what she does are at odds with each other. At least, that's how it seems. But then again, Misuzu's actions don't always make sense. Which is probably how she ended up dating Jun in middle school. Yup, just one of the speed bumps on the winding path of Jun and Tomo getting together is when he decided it would be a good idea to date her best friend. Predictably, things went terribly and they broke up after only 3 days. When this fact is initially revealed, we get only the barest explanation for why they got together in the first place. Jun essentially says he just wanted to try it out, and Misuzu thought it would be interesting, and a chance to increase her social standing a little bit since Jun was popular with the ladies. Truly the bedrock of a strong relationship. Despite Misuzu being fed up with being dragged literally dozens of miles around after a few long days, Jun was the one to break up with her, adding insult to injury and further fueling the malice between them. Tomo, thankfully, is a very forgiving friend, and when she finds out about this secret past relationship, she forgives and forgets pretty quickly. That willingness probably also helped with another detail we learn, which is that Jun avoided Tomo for a whole year when they entered middle school, something he coincidentally stopped doing around the time he broke up with Misuzu. The next major character and latecomer to the group is Carol Olston. Unlike the other three who have been friends since childhood, Carol isn't friends with Tomo at the start of the story. In fact, Tomo's first encounter with this air-headed British cotton candy woman is as a rival. You see, Tomo is a member of the karate club at school. She started in the girls' club, but because of her peerless strength and refusal to give any less than 100% in every match, all of the girls became terrified of facing her, and she was forced to join the boys' club, where she now terrifies the boys just as much. The president of the karate club, despite his somewhat feminine physique, is Kosuke Misaki. Kosuke is a distant relative and childhood friend of Carol, and unbeknownst to him, the object of her affection. When she sees how well he gets along with Tomo, Carol recognizes her as a potential threat and acts accordingly. It's not until Carol tries to get close to Jun under the advice of Misuzu that she realizes Tomo isn't anything close to being a rival for Kosuke's affection. And, again at Misuzu's suggestion, she decides to ask Tomo to be friends. Thankfully, love triangles don't play a major part in Tomo-chan. In addition to this initial conflict with Carol, we also have when Jun finds out that Kosuke is actually a boy. And while Jun is initially jealous and intimidating, as we learn he is with pretty much all of Tomo's other guy friends, he does actually take some time to talk to Misaki. And when he does, he acts relatively normal to him while Tomo isn't around. This scene also gives a better explanation of Jun's feelings towards Tomo early in the story. Jun sees Tomo primarily as a rival. He doesn't believe he can ever beat her within the rules of an officially sanctioned karate match like you would have at the club at school. The best he can do to have a chance of beating her is at the Aizawa family dojo because the rules there are different. He says that she's amazing, and he wants to be just like her. something Misaki can relate to. Misaki does have a fondness for Tomo as well, but not in the romantic sense. Pretty quickly, it's characterized more as admiration than affection. He even spells out clearly that he is a fan of her to Jun and Misuzu, but this happens in an omake. Therefore, it wasn't in the original run of the manga, and it doesn't end up making it into the anime adaptation. Unfortunately, Carol isn't privy to this information, and there is another more dramatic incidence of jealousy later on in the series. But thankfully, this also resolves fairly quickly, and it doesn't become a long-running focal point for the story. Misaki's heart belongs not to Aizawa, but instead, conveniently, to Carol, although he's not totally aware of that fact. Actually, the relationship between Carol and Misaki is pretty similar to Jun and Tomo's, in that Misaki doesn't really see Carol as a woman either. Carol's problem isn't being perceived as a guy, however. I mean, look at her. No, instead Misaki sees her as a child, or at best a little sister. Carol is probably my favorite character in Tomo-chan. For one, she's absolutely adorable. She's a ditzy bundle of positivity that just wants to give everyone hugs. She doesn't really have a filter and will say some pretty outrageous and hilarious things. Nothing ever seems to bother her, probably because she's too oblivious to realize something's wrong. But below her outward appearance lies something very different. Carol's a lot smarter than she lets on. She can be calculating and manipulative. She is genuinely ditzy in a lot of circumstances, so it's not always easy to tell if her questions and comments are coming from a place of ignorance or if she has some other motivation. While she may seem to let every bit of negativity roll off her like water off a duck's back, she's actually incredibly sensitive. Carol is a British girl who's lived in Japan her entire life, and she's seen her share of bullying. In fact, Tomo and Misuzu are the first real friends she's ever had. It's clear that a lot of her behaviors are coping mechanisms due to how she's been treated, not giving people the satisfaction of seeing how they've hurt her, and using her bimbo persona to get away with saying some pretty mean things. But then there is that actual element of helplessness and naivete that muddies the waters on how much of her actions are just Carol being Carol. There's an example of Carol's ignorance about the world that only appears in the manga when Tomo has to teach her how to ride a train. She is genuinely ignorant about it, so we know not everything she does is an act. The reason she's never ridden a train before is the same reason she hasn't done a lot of things, which is that Carol is absolutely loaded. Carol's father is the heir to a massive international business conglomerate, which requires him to leave and study abroad in Japan after high school, bringing her mother along with him. We don't really get any more on that in terms of why they're still there, or if he's now the president, or anything along those lines, but one thing is clear. Carol is rich. At one point, she invites Tomo and Misuzu over and we get to see the massive mansion she calls home. We also get to meet her mother.
人の家の前で何してるですか? 不審者ですか? 間違いないわ。間違いなくあいつの一族だ。キャロルちゃんのお友達? 本当ですか?
Can I just say that I absolutely love the voice acting on Ferris? It's like English, but in reverse. I've heard a lot of foreigners speaking Japanese, from fresh-off-the-boat English teachers to people who have lived there for decades, and you have to try to sound this bad. Ferris is similar to her daughter in a lot of ways. She's a ditzy airhead who gets lost on her own property and just wants to give hugs. But beneath that, she has flashes of the same manipulative, scheming ways that Carol has. In a conversation with Misuzu, who she finds adorable even though Misuzu keeps trying to rattle her, Ferris flat out says she dotes on Carol because, quote, if she learns how to fly, she'll leave the nest. That certainly sounds like a healthy way to parent. We actually get to meet the other girl's parents as well. Misuzu's mom Misaki makes a few brief appearances and is pretty much just a grown-up version of her daughter, just as ruthless and calculating. We also get to see her dad, who is the polar opposite of both of them, shown to be a loving parent who fawns over his wife and child for like the 2 panels he gets to be in. Misaki was also friends with Tomo's parents in high school, hence Tomo and Misuzu being friends from the time they were babies. She was always teasing Tomo's dad Goro, something that clearly left a lasting impression on him. Goro, in addition to being a fearsome karate master and head of the Aizawa dojo, has one of the most annoying traits that you see in anime. He is extremely shy and embarrassed around his wife. Just the sight of Tomo's mama Kami is enough to make him faint if he's worked up enough. I can't stand this particular trope. Look, I get that Japan has a different culture in terms of displaying affection and how much time married couples spend together, but come on. You've been married to this woman for at least 15 years. How are you not comfortable around her? How do you even function? It's a wonder Tomo was even born. It's just stupid. Akemi is my favorite of the parents. Like the others, she's basically just a grown-up version of her daughter, but as one would expect, she's more in touch with her feminine side. She does have some of that tomboy energy, but not nearly on the level of Tomo. Akemi and Goro get the most screen time of the parents, which isn't surprising considering their daughter is the title character, but it is funny when you consider Jun is the other half of the main couple, and his mom gets like one panel while his dad is just non-existent. A nice aspect of Tomo is that the writing is more subtle when it comes to characters. It is anime, so you still get a lot of characters monologuing internally about how they feel, but there is some nuance to it that requires a bit of thought from the reader. The background and motivations of characters are not always revealed up front, and sometimes they misunderstand their own emotions, so what they do doesn't match up with their inner monologue. Jun is a great example of this. Jun can be a very frustrating character because so much of what he does seems counterintuitive. There's a lot of times where it feels like he's just a blind idiot because the story couldn't continue if he wasn't. And while some of that is typical anime bad writing, as we learn more about him, we do see that there's more to it. Jun doesn't understand his own feelings, so of course his actions don't always make sense. There's a number of times where he talks about his relationship with Tomo to others, with Misaki, with the disguised Tomo, and with some sort of gorilla-human hybrid wearing people clothes. The way he sees Tomo, she's an idol on a pedestal, an untouchable rival he can never beat. When confronted with his romantic jealousy, he brushes it off as normal friend stuff. In his mind, Tomo would react the same way if Misuzu got a boyfriend and started spending all of her time with him. So of course Jun would feel upset if Tomo got with a guy. There's nothing more to it. Jun is in a state of denial about his feelings towards Tomo, a state that thankfully gets chipped away at as the story progresses. Jun's behavior isn't just the result of denial, however. There's a component to it that doesn't get revealed until a little later in the series. At one point, we get an extended flashback to when Tomo and Jun first met. We see Tomo hop the fence between their yards and find Jun absorbed in his Nintendo DS. She introduces herself, and within less than 5 minutes of meeting him, has ripped his DS in half. Tomo is apologetic, and so is her dad, who offers to let Jun train at the dojo for free to make up for it. Tomo apologizes again and says she just wants to be friends. We see through some snippets of Tomo and Jun's early friendship that Jun was very different when he was young. He starts as an indoorsy gamer kid. He's out of shape and can barely keep up with any of Tomo's antics. Over time, he lightens up and becomes more outgoing. Things seem to be going well until Jun is confronted by a pair of bullies.
でもそれはおいお前いいもん持ってるねただの勘違いだった
おい、そのほっぺどうしたんだ？
ああ、ちょっと転んじまって
あなたってほんとドジね。
まったくだ気をつけねえとな
Tomo sees through Jun's attempts to laugh things off and eventually runs into the bullies herself.
ほらよ。
なんでお前がこれを
ああ、な。道に落ちてたから拾った。
はあ
Tomo returns Jun's DS, but instead of relief, Jun is filled with something else. He's furious that Tomo put herself in danger and took on the bullies alone. But more than that, he's frustrated, because he knows he couldn't have done the same thing for her if the situation was reversed. Jun gives the DS back to Tomo, telling her that she can hold on to it until he earns it back by being stronger than her. He tells her dad he wants to join the dojo, and we know how the rest turns out. This pact Jun has made is one of the most defining elements of his character. Having his best friend 2v1 a pair of bullies he was powerless to stop implants an inferiority complex within him that follows him into the present day. Tomo herself comments that Jun is way stronger than her at this point and wonders why he hasn't come to take the DS back. But in Jun's mind, he still hasn't surpassed her. This inferiority complex is a barrier in his relationship with Tomo, and it shapes his interactions with her. As the series goes on and Jun is less and less able to deny his romantic feelings for Tomo, this complex begins to interfere. Jun feels like he isn't good enough for her. He needs to be able to protect her, or if not that, at least be on the same level as her. This pact about the DS has become a self-inflicted hurdle that he needs to clear if he's ever going to accept his feelings for Tomo and confess. Thankfully, things in this series don't stay the same for too long. A nice thing about the pacing of Tomo is that it moves pretty quickly and very few things feel like filler. Pretty much every one of these mini-arcs results in some level of progression to one of the major relationships within the story. We're always learning about characters or seeing them learn about themselves. Even though she's the protagonist, Tomo stays relatively consistent, but Jun, on the other hand, changes a lot. After a trip to the beach together, Jun isn't able to ignore the fact that Tomo is a woman. Later, the two of them go to a summer festival, and Jun rescues Tomo from a group of guys that are hitting on her. When he tells her that she could have handled it herself, she gets mad and explains to him that physical strength isn't everything. With this, Jun recognizes Tomo's vulnerability, at least in this case, and after that, he doesn't feel like he can fight her seriously anymore. It's incremental, but bit by bit, everything that's happening is changing his character and creating a sense of growth. Tomo, on the other hand, seems to grow the least. But that comes from the fact that a lot of her issues are more due to external factors. Tomo is surprisingly mature. She's motivated and passionate. She always tries to do the right thing and will always help someone in trouble, even if she barely knows them. She's a loyal and supportive friend. She might be oblivious, but when she understands that there is a problem, she does whatever she can to help fix it. As I mentioned before, she's an incredibly forgiving person. Jun pretty much ghosted her for an entire year in middle school, and she just accepts his apology like that. Carol and Misuzu do some pretty hurtful things to her, and her response is basically to say, you had your reasons, and move on. It's a pretty grown-up way to deal with things, coming from the kind of character that you wouldn't normally expect it from. Her only real negative traits are her obliviousness and getting carried away in the moment, which can sometimes get others hurt. But neither of those are moral failings, they're just carelessness. The more you see who Tomo is on the inside, the clearer it is that the best thing she could do is be herself. And yet, the message we're getting from this series, or at least the message that Tomo believes, is that she shouldn't be herself. Tomo is constantly told that she has to change. She has to act more feminine. She wants to be seen as a girl, but she clearly doesn't want to act girly or change the way she dresses. She goes along with it because she thinks that's what's going to help her achieve her goal of getting together with Jun. She goes on what can technically be described as a date with him early in the series, and she's told outright by Misuzu that she's not allowed to do it her own way. She tells her she can't go bowling or to the batting cages like they always do, and she suggests shopping and karaoke, which Tomo finds unnatural. And then, when they do go out, her and Jun end up doing those things anyway and having a ton of fun. They do also do karaoke, but it ends up being an awkward and embarrassing experience. Of course, Tomo has to make some changes in her approach in order to keep things from staying the way they are forever. Carol and Misuzu's frequent help getting Tomo to wear more girly clothes is one clear way she's able to get Jun to notice her, and have a harder time convincing himself that she's just one of the guys. A lot of their advice is responsible for helping progress their relationship, but it comes with this pernicious subtext that Tomo is unwittingly internalizing. Tomo is not good enough for Jun, at least not as she is now. Similar to Jun's inferiority complex, Tomo's insecurities start to get in the way as the story goes on. She buys into the narrative that she can't date Jun unless she becomes more feminine, that she isn't good enough to be with him if she's always acting like a guy. She relishes the time they get to compete together or just hang out, because she feels like it can't last. She laments that they won't be able to stay like this because she believes that once they're dating, they're not allowed to play dodgeball together or duel over the school marathon. In fact, in that very same summer festival I mentioned earlier, Tomo has seemingly a perfect chance to confess her love to Jun, and this time have it actually sink in. But instead of going through with it, she freezes. She realizes that if she tells him, everything is going to change, and she's scared of losing what she has. She doesn't know what being a couple will be like, but she knows it has to be different. This is dumb. Incredibly dumb. Obviously. Everyone's relationship is different, and it can be however the two people in it want it to be. There's no rulebook that says you can't go bowling with your romantic partner. So why does Tomo think that that's how it has to be? Well, before we can address that, I need to give a bit of a spoiler warning here. I'm going to be getting into some character stuff that is revealed later in the story. It's not exactly plot relevant, but it involves the motivations of characters, and if you want the purest experience watching or reading Tomo-chan, you should probably skip to the time code on screen. When Tomo came to Misuzu for help with her love life, she threw out the suggestion to act more feminine as just sort of generic advice. At least that's how she describes it. She was surprised at how seriously Tomo took it, and it eventually grew to become this curse. Misuzu eventually begins to realize that Tomo's belief that she can't stay a tomboy and date Jun is what's holding her back. She blames herself for what she's done to Tomo, and a lot of her attempts to get them together seem more like atonement than anything. Misuzu and Tomo are a very mismatched pair, and it means their friendship has never been on stable ground. Or at least that's Misuzu's perspective. An outside observer can clearly see that they'll never stop being friends simply because Tomo has decided that they're friends. Seemingly nothing her friends can do will stop her from forgiving them, and she'll never let them go because that's just what being friends means to her. But to Misuzu, their differences spell doom, and she's worried that Tomo's tomboyishness will pull her farther and farther away to somewhere where she can't follow. This actually is what pushes her to date Junichiro during middle school, in what is totally not a retcon. Jun stops talking to Tomo in middle school out of fear that their closeness is making everyone think they're a couple, and that the misunderstanding is going to cause problems for Tomo. This is, of course, incredibly stupid, but, you know, middle schoolers. Misuzu notices that during this period of the two not speaking, Tomo's tomboyishness has gotten a lot worse, and she feels like she needs someone that can act as a mediating force between them, someone to help tether her and Tomo together. She needs Jun. She tries to get him to start being friends with Tomo again, and instead gets asked out. Jun at this point thinks the only way he could be friends with Tomo without harmful rumors is for him to already have a girlfriend, which is, again, stupid. After their 3-day relationship ends and Jun goes back to being friends with Tomo, Tomo eventually asks Misuzu for help with her love life, and the cycle begins. In a way, Jun does help Misuzu and Tomo stay together, just like Misuzu wanted, just not in the way she envisioned. So Tomo stays close to Misuzu. She continues to ask her for advice on how to be more feminine, how to get Jun to notice her, and Misuzu gets to buy her clothes and get her to wear makeup and be her trusted confidant. It's exactly what she wanted. But the closer the two get, the more the frightening reality arises that eventually they will start dating. And once again, Misuzu will be left behind. For Misuzu, the best case scenario is for things to stay the way they are, for Tomo to keep doing girly stuff with her, to keep getting closer to Jun but never actually reach him. The solution is sabotage.
さっきのあれは何だったの？やっと気づいたのよ。私、友と純一郎に付き合ってほしくないみたい。え？今までだって私は邪魔しかしてなかったのよ。そうかな。みすずちゃんは自分で思ってるほど悪い子じゃないよ。キャロル。みすずちゃん。離れて。この流れでもダメか。
It's not intentional, of course, but Misuzu has been helping keep Jun and Tomo apart just as much as she's working to get them together. She put the curse on Tomo of making her think she can't date Jun and be a tomboy. She planted the idea that a relationship can't be going bowling or to the batting cages together. It's because of her that Tomo keeps trying to be something she's not. And eventually, Misuzu realizes this. In a very Misuzu way, she takes it incredibly hard. While she may exude an air of confidence, she actually has pretty low self-esteem. She seems convinced that she's a bad person and doesn't feel like she deserves a friend as forgiving and positive as Tomo. She tries to isolate herself, but when Tomo won't let her, she swears off of helping in Tomo's love life altogether. She feels such immense guilt at the fact that she doesn't want them to be together that she fails to see the way she's actually helped them. Tomo and Jun would have been content to just bro out forever, and her constant meddling has at least forced them to think about what it means to be in a relationship. In the end, Misuzu comes clean to Tomo about her feelings. She tells her that she's fine the way she is, and that she never needed to change, and in doing so, she gives Tomo the last push she needs. Whether she meant to or not, Misuzu does end up being a big part of why the two get together. All of this feeds into what is probably the most major theme of Tomo-chan. You are good enough. Basically, all of the major conflicts with these characters comes from them trying to be something they're not. They don't recognize their own worth or the value of being who they are. Carol feigns a lot of her airheadedness as a defense mechanism, but that gets in the way of her relationship with Misaki. He feels like he can never get close to her because she never shows any signs of vulnerability. He thinks he's too weak and that she doesn't need him because he's so focused on this facade of unflappability she projects. At the same time, Misaki fails to recognize his own strength because he's constantly comparing himself to two absolute freaks of nature. Jun and Tomo both think that they aren't good enough to be with each other. Jun thinks he has to be stronger than Tomo, and Tomo thinks she has to be more feminine. Even Misuzu thinks she's not good enough to be Tomo's friends and that she'll be left behind the second Tomo gets a boyfriend. There's so much self-doubt, and all it does is hold people back. This is a series about being a tomboy. And the essence of being a tomboy is liking what you like, being who you want to be, and not letting society tell you how you're supposed to act. It's not until our cast starts to live that idea that they begin to move forward. Once they stop focusing so much on trying to become someone else, they start to recognize who they are. When the walls come down, that's when we see real progress. And I think that's a lesson we can all learn from. So now for the big question. How well does Tomo-chan do as an anime adaptation? Funnily enough, it's kind of the exact opposite of the subject of my last RTFM, Gunsmith Cats. While that was wholly an original story based on the world of the manga, Tomo-chan wa Onanoko follows the manga almost exactly 1-to-1. Nearly everything you see on screen is a direct translation from the manga. Of course, it's not exactly 100%. The series, while short, is still a bit long to fit into a 13-episode season, and so there is a lot of stuff from the manga that gets cut out. One thing we see a lot of is the lead-ins to certain stories being removed. Most of the time, it makes perfect sense. We see the girls having a sleepover at Tomo's house, we don't need to actually see the process of her inviting them over. But just because you don't need to see those segments to understand what's happening, doesn't mean they're worthless. In one example, we lose Tomo being so revved up for the dodgeball tournament that the gym teacher is forced to ask her to join the boys' team, so she doesn't accidentally kill one of the girls. Hanao-sensei talks to Misuzu and Carol and finally Tomo, and we get a lot of fun character stuff, like Misuzu trying to extort her, or Carol blanking out and thinking they're having a staring contest. We also get a moment with Tomo where Hanao-sensei asks her to dial it back, and she says that giving any less than 100% would be disrespectful to her opponents and her teacher. Interactions like these help inform the characters, and losing them isn't nothing. The anime also cuts the lead up to a beach trip when Tomo has to go buy a new swimsuit. In the manga, we get to see June invite Tomo, and Tomo talking to the girls about how she's going to wear her school swimsuit to the beach, which she is then firmly told is not okay. The anime doesn't show the girls going shopping and Tomo picking out a swimsuit that's not really all that different from the school one, prompting a blank stare of disdain from Carol. I swear, out of all of the reaction images generated by the series, I feel like this is the one I see the most, and it's crazy to me that they did not animate it. There's a lot of little interstitial stories that don't make it into the anime. There's one about the girl's annual health check, there's one where Tomo absolutely schools June's friends in basketball, and then there's the one I mentioned from earlier about Carol learning how to use the train. For the most part, you can see why these are cut since they don't really add a lot, but again, they let us see more of the characters, like how Carol really is helpless sometimes. But removing whole sections isn't where most of the changes happen in the adaptation. Instead, it's mainly small cuts, often single pages or even single panels in the middle of a larger scene. The most frequent reason this is done is to trim the fat and smooth things out a little bit, and the need for this comes from how the manga is structured. Tomo-chan is a 4-koma, a style of manga that follows a basic 4-panel structure for each page. During its original run, Tomo is actually serialized not in print, but digitally through Twitter. The Twitter account Twiyon serializes a number of comics with pages posted in a daily format. From April of 2015 to July of 2019, one page of Tomo-chan was posted to the Twitter account every day, excluding some very painful hiatuses. After the series gained some popularity, it did also start being collected into tankobons and sold physically, which is how I came across the series. A 4-koma is essentially a newspaper comic. It has 4 panels and follows a predictable setup punchline structure, meaning that each page ends on a joke. This can be awkward when adapting one, since an anime doing this can end up feeling very disjointed. The staccato beat of setup punchline is not how a normal conversation goes, so understandably, when adapting one, the weaker jokes get removed to help improve the overall flow and make it feel less like you're watching a stand-up comedy routine. But cutting jokes so that things flow better has the unfortunate result of, cutting jokes. Sure, a lot of what's trimmed is unnecessary, but a few of them are really funny. When June hands his DS back to Tomo and makes the pact to earn it back from her, she asks when he wants it back. His response is, when he's stronger than her, and her response is, wow, so you're giving it to me? It's such a funny moment, but it doesn't make it into the anime. Even more egregious is a moment during the cultural festival. Tomo's class is putting on a play of Cinderella, and June is cast as a tree. There's this amazing page of him talking to the tree, touching it, seeing it clearly for the first time, feeling the pulse of Mother Nature. And it's cut! Why are you doing this to me? Other times, the way things get adapted can mess up the joke. Probably the most clear example of this comes early on when Carol thinks Tomo is her love rival. We get this exchange where she goes to talk to Misuzu, and after a bit of back and forth, it's revealed that she's sitting on top of Misuzu's desk. In the anime, this doesn't work well, because while the manga has blank backgrounds for this page, the anime clearly shows the ground behind Misuzu in this straight-on POV shot that can only really be the view from atop her desk. Your brain notices it, so the punchline is less surprising. Misuzu tells her to talk to Jun, so next we have a short exchange between the two of them, before it's revealed that she's standing inside of his locker. In the anime, we get an establishing shot of the locker room and even a moment of the boys chatting about girls in class, which completely undercuts the joke. You're not led to believe this conversation could be happening anywhere else, so the comedy comes from the absurdity of her being in the locker rather than the surprise that she's in there. Going back to that cut-down tree joke, we actually get a follow-up to it that does make it in. In the manga, we get this long passage about how, despite his classmates probably giving him the role as a joke, the audience barely notices Jun on stage. His presence has faded to the point that they scarcely even notice there's a tree. Only one man in the crowd is able to fully grasp it. He had become the tree. It's one of my favorite pages in the whole comic, and the anime just butchers it. It already has most of the wind taken out of its sails because we didn't get that first bit of setup with Jun getting serious about the role as a mighty redwood. Then for the moment itself, they cut out half the lead up and don't really treat it with the level of drama and import you feel in the manga. Plus the art on Jun's expression really sells the joke, and it just doesn't come across that well in the anime. The art is actually an issue in a lot of instances with the anime. Fumita has a fairly unique art style. It's nothing too out there, but it's recognizable and it lends a lot of personality to his characters. The anime tries to emulate this, but it doesn't quite match it. Honestly, it can kind of look pretty janky at times. There's some key times where I feel like the art really sells the joke or takes a more mundane panel and makes it memorable, and those don't really translate too strongly in the animation. In some cases, it can change the emotion that was present in the original. There's this moment where Tomo is yelling at Tanabe about him not warning her that Jun frequents the ramen shop she's working part-time at. In the manga, she's looking up at him because, despite how the anime makes it look, Tomo may be tall for a girl, but she's still shorter than basically all of the guys around her. Her expression and the fact that she's looking up make her look more embarrassed, while in the anime she's towering over him and just looks mad. In other cases, it feels like the art can remove the emotion entirely. I feel like this happens to Carol most often. Carol has a pretty unique design and it clearly made her pretty hard to animate. Oftentimes she just ends up having a blank expression on her face, when in the manga, there's some more subtle emotion going on that helps belie what she's really thinking underneath, which is essential considering how core hiding her feelings is to her whole character. Characterization is another thing that's affected by the cuts. It's not just jokes that get removed. It's small moments like a jealous Misuzu touching Tomo's leg, or Tomo trying to give Jun the DS back before he's willing to accept it. These are things that tell us bits about the character, and their removal influences that perception. Tomo instantly forgives Carol for assaulting Jun to get back at her for a misunderstanding about Misaki's feelings, and the anime cutting that lessens the impression of how chill and forgiving of a friend she is. It's a lot of little things, but they start to add up over time. Another example is when Kosuke tries to join the Aizawa dojo and ends up sparring with Jun. He manages to land one punch before Jun instinctively counters and knocks him out. In the manga, he appears to already be in motion and it makes the blow look like it happened mid-fight. But in the anime, he's standing still and thinking about it, and then he attacks. When you add in the surprised expression on Jun's face, it almost looks like it was a sucker punch, which really takes away from the admittedly small victory. After Kosuke regains consciousness and talks to Tomo, he's still pretty down on himself. He's met on his way out, in the manga at least, by Jun, who gives him an encouraging little, "I'll get you next time" comment. It's a nice gesture that gives Kosuke a win, and it makes Jun seem like a good guy, and it builds friendship between the two of them. So losing it is a shame, however minor it might be. Definitely the most major change in terms of how consistently it happens is the decreased focus on the parents of our main characters. They do get a fair amount of screen time in the anime, but there's a lot of little moments cut. Some I don't mind being cut because they're kinda weird, like Akemi offering to let Tomo borrow her lingerie, or showing up in said lingerie declaring she won't lose to Tomo for Goro's attention. But there's others I do really miss, like when Misuzu and Carol go over to Tomo's house, and all Akemi wants to do is hug and dote on them. It's a cute detail that she loves kids, and that Tomo gets jealous of her wanting to spoil everyone but her. Akemi also gets shafted on another cute moment when she shows up at school after Tomo passes out with a high fever during the class marathon. She's so worried and doesn't know what to do because she's not used to anyone in her family getting sick. In the anime, she's just there to take Tomo home, and we never actually see her go into the infirmary. Goro does get to show up and make this leak joke in the anime, but right after that, they cut out him praying at a shrine 100 times for Tomo to get healthy again. One of the weirdest changes with Tomo's parents comes from a point when Jun challenges Goro to a duel. He brings Akemi along as a secret weapon to embarrass Goro and throw him off, which we see in the anime. What we don't see, however, is that instead of handicapping him, Tomo's dad powers up and becomes even fiercer because he would never allow himself to lose in front of his wife. It's insane to me that they left the setup in, but cut the punchline. The only reason I can think of this is because they need to show that Akemi is here in the room for other parts of the scene that come later, but it really makes less sense because there was no reason for him to bring her there in the first place. Carol's parents appear much less frequently, but also manage to get their roles reduced. As I mentioned earlier, we lose out on Ferris's comment about not wanting Carol to leave the nest, but in the manga we also get this joke where Carol introduces her as her sister. This joke goes over Tomo and Misuzu's heads because they believe her, considering Ferris is only 28 years old. Carol is 15. If you're someone that can do basic math, you can probably see why they might have wanted to cut this from the anime. We get to see Carol's dad in an omake, which flashes back to when he told Ferris that he was moving to Japan and asked her to come with him. She uses the opportunity to tell him about her age and that she's pregnant. As far as cuts go, I'm not against them removing a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old having this discussion. Now let's never speak of it again. Misuzu's parents get by far the lowest amount of screen time. In fact, her dad is only ever in 2 pages. Despite that, they still edited him out of the anime completely. My poor Gundad just wanted to love his wife and daughter, and they cut him like an incredibly uncomfortable underage relationship. Unforgivable. Her mom, on the other hand, comes out mostly okay since she's barely in the comic. The most significant cut to the parents comes during the cultural festival. In the anime, we briefly see the 3 moms sitting together making a few comments before the play starts. But in the manga, we see them arriving, we see Akemi running into Misaki, and then the 2 of them encountering Ferris, who's being followed by bodyguards like she's a foreign VIP. Some of this is folded into the brief scene in the anime, including Misaki saying Misuzu told her that they weren't having a cultural festival this year, which is something we actually get to see in the manga. We also miss out on a cute moment of Akemi congratulating Misuzu after the play, and getting another dig in at Misaki. It's really fun to see the moms interacting, to see how their personalities and dynamics parallel their daughters, and the anime just didn't think it was worth keeping. It's not as if these scenes are essential to the plot, but they add a lot of personality to the story. The moms are a lot of people's favorite part of Tomo-chan. Some people like them even better than their daughters. Stripping them out, much like a lot of other parts getting removed, just serves to make the anime a somewhat lesser experience than reading the manga. Plus, it leads to possibly my favorite joke of the series getting cut. There's a running joke that Tomo and Jun's parents just assume they're dating and are completely fine with it. When Tomo goes to spend the night at Jun's house, both sets of parents make jokes about what to do with their grandchild. Later on, there's a moment where Tomo invites herself back to Jun's house, and he asks her what would their parents think. And she yells that there is literally not a single adult in their lives that would have a problem with it. I get that this moment makes less sense when you don't see the parents constantly shipping them, and it kind of undercuts the romantic tone that they're going for here, but come on, you gotta give me something. You're cutting all of my favorite jokes here. Now, all of this isn't to say that every single thing about the adaptation is bad. They will occasionally add in or enhance visual gags. My favorite of these is this little embellishment given to Carol being referred to as a cotton candy girl. Another one I like comes right after when we actually get to see Carol call Tomo an idiot 3 times, instead of like in the manga where Misuzu just says that's the 3rd time today. Some jokes work better when there's motion or sound added. I didn't even realize that Carol was supposed to be doing like a Wolverine claw thing with the makeup tools here. Other situations are enhanced by the voice acting and animation. I do think by and large the voice acting here is good in terms of casting, although I always pictured Carol as sounding a little more airy and absent-minded than she does here. I know Sally Amaki was cast because she's bilingual and she could voice Carol in English and Japanese, but that doesn't really do much for me. Like, it's a fun quirk, but I don't know that it really improves things in and of itself. Plus, I find the English dub for the series to be genuinely unlistenable. I do like the opening and ending credits for the anime. Neither of them are making any all-time greatest lists, but they have charm and they fit in well with the tone of the series. There's also a fun thing they do by having the end, which is normally sung by the 3 female leads, switch over to the male characters for one episode. When all these things are put together, they coalesce to form an anime adaptation that is good. Not outstanding, but good. It is definitely commendable that they were able to fit the entire series into a single season, especially when more seasons are not a guarantee, and when you get them, they can take years to come out. If you're going to choose one, there is something to be said about being able to just throw this on Crunchyroll and experience the whole series in a few hours rather than having to track down the manga. The anime hits all the notes you need, but in their effort to fit everything into a 13-episode season, so much was left on the cutting room floor, and not all of it was fat. It does really make me wish that they had been able to push to 14 or even 15 episodes just to get those extra bits in there. If I had to make a choice between the two, I would definitely say that the manga is the better choice over the anime. The added content you get and the added charm of Fumita's artwork, I think, makes for a more complete and engaging experience. If you choose to only watch the anime, I don't think you're going to have a bad time. I just think you'll be missing some of the little things that help shape a lot of why the series sticks with people. Tomo-chan as a Girl is a great series. It's a fun rom-com with surprising depth in its characters. What on the surface level looks like a story about a tomboy trying to find love turns out to be a tale of self-doubt, the nature of relationships, and the importance of being yourself. The manga may make for a slightly better time, but no matter how you experience the series, I don't think you'll come away disappointed. For my money, if you're a fan of tomboys, love, or if you just want to see a sentient cotton candy woman make funny faces, don't hesitate. Go out and read the fucking manga.